Who was Alois Dvorzak? All we knew was that he was 84. He was from Slovenia, but lived in Canada.
Je bil taka markantna oseba v družini, ne?
And we knew that he died in handcuffs while being detained at Harmondsworth Immigration Removal Centre.
Tako dolgo je bil vklenjen.
But that was it. Just a name. No face. Until now. But there's more. Much more. This face represents a damning indictment of the way we remove immigrants from the UK. The doctor who examined him in detention weeks before his death says she knew he shouldn't have been there and alerted everyone, including the Home Office.
I tried extra hard in this case to do the right thing by this patient, and I feel as if nothing I said or did made any difference. A lack of humanity, a lack of common sense, and a lack of compassion, ultimately.
Our story begins in Maribor, Slovenia, where he grew up. We've come here to try to piece together the mystery surrounding this man. His death at the time got remarkably little coverage because no one knew who he was. All anyone had was a name. We're here to try and put a face and a life to that name. We've been given an address that we're told was his childhood home here. This address. He lived here with his mother and 3 sisters. His dad died when he was 2. His niece kept all the photos, kept all the letters. So this was Alois Dvorzak.
Je bil taka markantna oseba v družini, ne? Tudi te 3 sestre, vključno z mojo mamo, ne? Pač 3 sestre so ga pač imele v časti.
He was super clever. His school report in occupied Maribor. Every subject, sehr gut. Then a big blot on his report card as far as the Nazis were concerned. As the war was ending, he joined the Slovenian partisans, but soon became disillusioned with the new communist regime.
Vsa ta politična ureditev in je kleščila te sposobne ljudi, ne, takrat. Ja. Ne oditi. Ja. Tisti, ki je pač tukaj ostal, so mu odrezali krila.
He taught himself English, became the first of his family to go to university in the capital, Ljubljana, but all with a view to getting out. And before he left Slovenia for Canada, he met Dana, and they were married.
A big love.
Another niece remembers.
Velika ljubezen, spoštovanje. Ker takšen je bil, tudi Dana je bila enkratna.
In those dark days of post-war Slovenia, this enlightened young man represented hope for the women in his life. So when he told them that him and Dana were emigrating, they were heartbroken. So devastated at the prospect that he was leaving, his mother and sisters couldn't even bring themselves to wave him off from the bus stop here on this street. So instead, they sent his favourite niece along. Her name was Edita. She was 12 at the time. She remembers that day as if it was yesterday.
So mene poslali, da sem jaz bila tista zadnja, ko sem pa rekla bye bye. Tega danes vidim, ne takšnega, danes ga vidim.
The regime made it difficult for people to leave at the time. He first made it to Austria and then Canada. This was the only time in his life he could ever have been described as an illegal immigrant. In Canada, he was nationalised, had a successful career as an engineer. According to letters home, the couple enjoyed gardening together and making bad wine. They didn't have children, but if this photograph is anything to go by, did have a very happy life together for many years. Which all leads us to the following devastating question. How was it that a life that started here in Slovenia, full of historical resonance and affection and adventure, ended up extinguished in handcuffs at a British detention centre. In January last year, Alois Dvorzak got on a plane in Canada, his intention to fly to Slovenia to reconnect with the life he had left behind. Dana had passed away, Alzheimer's was setting in. He got as far as Gatwick. He was refused entry to the UK. Perhaps he didn't have the right paperwork, had some sort of episode, thought he was home. We don't know. Either way, for some reason, he was brought to the detention centre. He complained of chest pains soon after arriving and was examined by a doctor. This is that doctor's first interview. She's asked for anonymity lest it jeopardise her career. She immediately knew this was the wrong man in the wrong place.
This person was extremely vulnerable, was frail, and should not have been in there in the first place, let alone to be detained for such a long while. The sort of person that you see and you immediately identify with as a sort of grandfather figure.
So first up, she alerted her line manager.
She told me that I had to fill in a special piece of paperwork and fax it to the UK border agency. I documented everything in that piece of paperwork, I faxed it across, but I still didn't feel happy that that was enough, and so I asked if I could speak to UKBA myself.
Which she did. Then she went even further and put an emergency call into the Canadian High Commission.
At that point, there was not much more that I could do. I definitely think that I tried to act ethically. I always do. I tried extra hard in this case to do the right thing by this patient, and I feel as if nothing I said or did made any difference. So I agree with you.
But it was sort of a computer says no kind of...
Absolutely. A lack of humanity, a lack of common sense, and a lack of compassion, ultimately.
During his time in detention, he was admitted to hospital, but was then returned to the centre. He'd been detained for almost 3 weeks. When his heart gave way, he'd been in handcuffs for 5 hours. A prisons inspector's report into Harmondsworth this year has a paragraph about his case. It says he was needlessly handcuffed in an excessive and unacceptable way. He was still wearing them when he passed away.
Tako dolgo je bil vklenjen. Zelo težko.
But why, after all those years, did he get on that plane in the first place? Because before he met Dana, he had a daughter from a previous marriage while at university. Over the years, he completely lost contact with her. But then this. A few years ago, one of the last letters he wrote.
Celi svet se neverjetno hitro spreminja. Pa to. Jaz bom rabil naslov moje hčerke Alenke. Ali mi ga lahko priskrbiš? Do prihodnjega, Lojze.
According to the family, the reason Alois Dvorzak got on that plane was to try to reconnect with his long-lost daughter. So, an adventurous spirit goes on one last journey for companionship, closure, perhaps repair. A quest that only got this far, then ended up handcuffed, gasping for breath.